complexities of the negotiations.
Israel's trying to thread the needle. On the one hand, to bring all the hostages home. On the other hand, to completely remove Hamas as a political and military power in the Gaza Strip. Many have said that these two goals are not able to be reached simultaneously. You have to pick one or the other. Netanyahu is trying to do both. And for Hamas, their only cards left in this battle are the hostages that they are holding.
Prime Minister Netanyahu has said negotiations will only take place with Hamas under fire, and the Israel Defense Forces have expanded ground operations in southern Gaza, targeting terrorist infrastructure. Hamas is said to want to use a ceasefire now to squash anti-Hamas protests in Gaza. In the latest, 22-year-old Palestinian protester Odeh al-Rabi has been tortured and killed by Hamas, and his funeral turned into another protest against the terror group. Meanwhile, a few hours ago, in solidarity with Hamas, the Houthis in Yemen fired another ballistic missile at Israel, again putting millions of people into shelters here in Tel Aviv and across to Jerusalem. The IDF said the missile was successfully intercepted. Hamas released another propaganda video of hostage Elkanah Bobot begging for his release. Protests in Israel for a hostage deal continued over the weekend, and many commentators believe Hamas will up the psychological pressure and the Houthis will up the missiles as negotiations continue. Back to you.
Thanks so much, Jody.
Thank you, Jody. That's very disturbing information. For more on all of this, let's welcome in CEO and Jerusalem Bureau Chief of the Jewish News Syndicate, Alex Traiman. Alex, thank you for joining us. We've just heard a bit of your take on these negotiations, and I can understand why Netanyahu wants all 24 of the living hostages released. They're being starved to death, as we know. Your take?
Well, you see that Hamas is asking for a 50-day ceasefire in exchange for 5 living hostages. If you've got 24 living hostages, you're talking about 250 days of ceasefire in exchange for these 24 hostages. That's exactly what Hamas wants. They want to prevent Israel from going back into Gaza, from removing Hamas from power, making sure that they never are able to rearm themselves as a military force, which they're doing during this ceasefire period, and wants to see Hamas expelled as a political force in the Gaza Strip.
So you think Netanyahu is correct to hold out for more, right?
There was 250 plus hostages taken in the beginning of the war. They've been, the ones that are still in captivity have been there for over 500 days. The idea that we should just allow them to continue to sit in captivity, I think, is appalling to most of the Israeli public. Israel wants to see a deal in which all of the living hostages are released now, and then to give Hamas leaders an exit path to Qatar or to Turkey or elsewhere in exile, and then to see a permanent ceasefire in the Gaza Strip.
So these ceasefire talks come as Hamas released yet another sickening hostage propaganda video of a distraught hostage pleading to be released and saying time is running out. We know there have been many protests against the government from hostage families over the renewed fighting. What do you make of the Hamas releasing this video?
Well, we've seen this kind of propaganda warfare used against Israel from the beginning. That's why they took the hostages to begin with. But I do want to make clear that those that are protesting in Israel now in favor of a hostage deal, these are anti-government protests. You know, we've had pretty robust protests in Israel during 5 consecutive elections that we had in 5 years before the war. We had robust anti-government protests during judicial reforms that Netanyahu tried to initiate in the months before the war. And now these same protesters have taken on the hostage movement as their casus belli, as their reason for operation right now. They are just anti-government protesters. They'd be protesting this government even if there was not one hostage in Gaza.
That's a very important clarification. I hate to move on, but I have to because we have to get to Iran, another really bad actor. Trump is threatening bad things to Iran if it does not reach a new nuclear deal by the end of May. Take a listen.
Iran is very high on my list of things to watch. And as you probably know, sent them a letter just recently, and I said, you're going to have to make a decision one way or the other, and we're going to either have to talk and talk it out, or very bad things are going to happen to Iran, and I don't want that to happen.
So what do you make of that, Alex?
Well, obviously, I think the president would like to see Iran dismantle its own nuclear facilities, or to have some kind of arrangement where the United States can come in peacefully and dismantle the Iranian nuclear facilities. However, the Iranians are not going to be willing to negotiate unless they see that there is a credible military threat. And I think that's part of what you're seeing now also in Yemen, with the Trump administration launching fresh attacks on the Houthis there. It's a signal to Iran that the United States means business, that is not afraid to operate in the Middle East, and that if some kind of agreement cannot be reached to dismantle the nuclear facilities peacefully, then the United States will come in and dismantle them by force.
So Iran's head speaker in parliament is warning the U.S. against military action and slamming Israel's strike on Hezbollah in Lebanon, saying the Zionist regime is, in fact, criminal American killing machine. Israel would not have survived for a week without U.S. support. What's your reaction to hearing that?
Well, I think, you've seen that Iran has said that they want to wipe Israel off the map. I mean, this is the reason why they've built this ring of terror that includes Hezbollah, the Houthis, Hamas. They've destabilized the entire Middle East, for that matter. I do think that Israel has what it takes to survive in this region, mainly because we've got nowhere else to go. But we've got a strong military, a battle-ready military, and Israel has always said that it will fight with its fingernails if it has to, willing to defend itself by itself if that's what it needs to do. Having the support of the United States obviously is a big backing for Israel's legitimacy, and Israel has no better friend right now than the United States and this Trump administration.
Well said. Speaking of these strikes on Hezbollah, the leader of Hezbollah is warning Israel that if the strikes continue, they might retaliate and resort to, quote, other alternatives, apparently referencing using weapons to fight Israeli troops on the ground inside of Lebanon. You must be concerned about this, too.
Well, when Prime Minister Netanyahu declared the ceasefire in Lebanon, he did so in order to isolate Hamas, in order to turn attention back towards Gaza and try to get the remaining hostages out. It was understood at the time he did that the job had not been finished in southern Lebanon, just as the job has not been finished in Gaza. Netanyahu was really trying to run out the clock on the Biden administration. Now there's a new sheriff in town in the United States, and we're seeing that we may be heading towards all-out hostilities, a second round of fighting that will give Israel the opportunity to close the chapter on all these terrorist movements and usher in, hopefully, a new era of peace for decades to come.
Well said, Alex Traiman. Thank you so much for joining us. And now, coming up, a top MS-13 gang member